So there's a bunch of us here. So let's get started. All right. So how many of you are curious about Saturn in Aquarius? We already can feel it, I think, right? Saturn has already entered Aquarius on March 21st. So how many of you can already feel that? Anybody? Hands up or chat window or whatever you want to do. Okay, yeah, Tatya can feel it. Debbie, I'm doing great and excited to be here. Thanks, Debbie. Megan said, yep, feeling it. Okay, great. Awesome. All right, and so how many of you have personal planets or points in Capricorn or Aquarius? Because obviously those are the two signs that we're going to be talking about the most today, Capricorn and Aquarius. Danny has some stuff. Great. Okay. Megan, you too. Great. I do too. I got Jupiter in Aquarius. I got the North Node in Capricorn. Okay. Mercury in Capricorn, Tatya. Does the moon count? Of course the moon counts, Ari. That's your moon. Those are your emotions, your feelings, your responses to the world. Of course the moon counts. Yes, moon in Aquarius. Very good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sharing. All right. Well, first of all, thanks so much for being here. Oh, wait, there's one more question. How many of you have an ascendant or sun sign in Sagittarius or Scorpio? And the reason why I'm asking that, of course, is because Sagittarius is connected to Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. And we're going to talk about the Jupiter-Pluto alignment in Capricorn today. Okay, so we have a couple of takers here. April, Tatya, very good. Scorpio rising. Aida, Scorpio rising, yes. And sun in Scorpio, very good. You have both of them. Excellent. Okay, so definitely for those of you who have that Sagittarius Scorpio sun sign, rising sign combination, you will definitely feel this Jupiter-Pluto alignment quite strongly. And then, of course, for those of you who have Capricorn and Aquarius stuff, you will feel the Saturn stuff more strongly, Saturn-Mars alignment as well. All right, but we'll get into that. Thanks. First of all, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. I know everything's kind of like topsy-turvy right now, so I don't know how each of you are experiencing this. I'm sure everyone has their own way of adapting and feeling into what's currently going on. I feel for me it's kind of like a regular work day, but at the same time it's also I don't really know quite what the day of the week is, right? Like today it was difficult to see that it was Monday. It could have been just as well Tuesday or Sunday or Friday, so I kind of lose track of what day of the week it is. Okay, but anyways, thanks for being here. I just want to say maybe a little bit about myself for those of you who are new to the forums. I guess I've been doing the forums now for several years, at least since 2016, I think. And then I've been doing, of course, my AstrologerCoach, stuff with readings and coaching and stuff since 2010. And the YouTube videos and the blogs and all that stuff has been going on for almost 10 years. So it's been a good stretch of time. And of course, I love astrology. So this is no, it's not been very difficult for me to be doing it. But everything has ups and downs, of course, right? So I'm not going to pretend like it's all been rosy all the time. There's been definitely moments of like where my business has been, like going through stuff and where I've had to stretch myself, or I've had to grow, or I've had to, deal with challenges in regards to my website, for example. So, it's been great, but it's also been challenging, of course, as well. Which, of course, I'm sure most of you will have similar experiences somewhere in your life where, you've been growing, but at the same time, there's also been challenges because of how the astrology has been with, Saturn in Capricorn and, for 2.5 years. And then Pluto also has been in Capricorn since 2008. So all of us kind of have been moving through some kind of, needing to investigate, where we're at and what are we doing and how we're doing it. And, are there any obstacles and any challenges? Do we need to overcome anything? So I'm sure all of us have been sort of exploring that a little bit. Now, of course, today we'll talk about Saturn in Aquarius, and that's going to be until July 1st, the first batch, and then it will go retrograde again, and then it will come back into Aquarius at the end of the year until March 2023, right? So that's a good long stretch. I mean, Saturn stays in a sign always for 2.5 years, and it's sort of like a 29-year cycle, right? Because every 29 years, Saturn comes back to its original position where it started 29 years earlier. So you could say that Saturn in Aquarius is sort of like 29 years ago, we've had Saturn in Aquarius as well, and 29 years before that as well, right? So we can actually, when we look at these cycles with astrology, what's so wonderful with astrology is we kind of can take a look back at history, and we can look at these cycles and see, well, what has occurred for me when the last time that cycle happened? What happened for me during that time, right? And so for Saturn in Aquarius, the last cycle, let me just give you the exact dates here. So that was February 1991 until May 1993, and then also July 1993 until January 1994, and then 29 years previous to that. So I don't know how many of you were already alive at that point, but January 1962 until March 1964, and then September until December 1964. So some of us were already alive. I wasn't, but some of you may have been already alive at that time. But so those are the times where Saturn was in Aquarius, the last 2 cycles, right? So we can kind of like get a feel for what does that feel like, right? Saturn in Aquarius. So the other thing that we're going to be talking about, of course, is the Jupiter-Pluto alignment in Capricorn, which was exact on Saturday evening. For you in Europe, it was Sunday morning. And so April 4th and 5th. And it will be exact again on June 30th and on November 12th, because we will actually have this alignment 3 times this year because of the retrograde phases, right? Jupiter will go retrograde in May. Pluto is going retrograde in the end of April already. So as these retrograde phases happen, on June 30th, there will be a Jupiter-Pluto alignment because of the retrograde phase. And then as these planets go direct again, then will be another alignment on November 12th when they're direct again. So as you can see, there's going to be sort of like a movement between these planets. And, a Jupiter-Pluto alignment is something that is a 13-year cycle, right? So every 13 years we have an alignment between Jupiter and Pluto. And the last time this alignment happened was in, December 2007 was the last one. That was in Sagittarius. And then before then, the last one was in December of 1994, which was in a late degree of Scorpio. So we have late degree of Scorpio in 94, late degree of Sagittarius in 2007, and now late degree of Capricorn in 2020, right? 3 times in a row. And the last time this happened in Capricorn, because of course, then there's a larger cycle between those 2 planets as well, because not only do they come together every 13 years, there's also a larger cycle in which they come together in Capricorn, right? So that cycle is way longer. The last time it was in Capricorn was February 1771. So that's really a long cycle, right? But we can definitely think about, what happened in February 1771. What is history telling us? And we have to be very careful, though, when we look at that, because when we look at history, we always have to take into consideration that obviously the consciousness of the planet in 1771 was a completely different one than it is currently right now today. So we have to take that into account. And I read very often articles from other astrologers about, certain astrological cycles, and they refer back to, the history of what happened back then, like the Holocaust, or, the atom bomb, or, this and this happened, and, the Civil War or slavery or whatever whatever people refer back to. And it's really important to remember that, yes, these are definitely things that happened at that time, at that same time when that cycle took place. But the consciousness of the people was also completely different from the way it is now, which means that we're obviously going to be experiencing it very differently in the now time than we did, 200 years ago, or even just 50 or 60 years ago, right? So we have to keep that in mind. That's very, very important, because I don't want people to go into a place of fearfulness just because something bad happened in history at a certain time when the same astrological cycle happened as it did today. And the same is true for your own personal chart, right? Like if you look back to times when a planetary alignment happened, or when something happened, like what I mentioned earlier, like if you look back to December of 2007, for example, and something happened at that time for you that was really dramatic or drastic or huge for you, I want you to remember that, you are, you're 13 years, that was 13 years ago, right? So there's 13 years is a long time in which our consciousness shifts a lot, and where we change. I mean, we change on a cellular level every 7 years. Cellularly speaking, we're a different person, right? The whole body has renewed itself. Every cell in the body has renewed itself every 7 years. So if you think about that, right, that means that, you are no longer the same person than you were 13 years ago. Obviously, you can't be, right? Because life changes us. So, and this is obviously, in right now, we can feel that even more so with the way things are, with everything, how drastically things are changing right now. We can really feel that we are no longer the same people than we were even just 6 months ago, right? We are not, or even just 3 months ago. So it's important to consider that, when you think back on dates and cycles. Not to say that it's bad to do so. You can still do it and take something from it, but I want you to take the essence from that rather than specific events and being fearful about something repeating itself, history repeating itself, because history cannot repeat itself ever. It doesn't. It's impossible. It's an impossibility. All right. Everything always changes. All right. Anyways, enough about that. So one thing I do want to say is that if I can, if you have any questions for me throughout the webinar or at the end of the webinar, about Saturn in Aquarius or about the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, I'm happy to answer questions as much as I can. And I will be, if I have your chart, I can look at your chart. If I don't have your chart, then please just give me, whatever you can from your chart, degrees, signs, houses, whatever you have, so that I can answer your question as best as possible. And if there is a question that you have that's a little bit too personal or too long-winded for our purposes today, then I will ask you to do a reading with me. All right. And we'll focus questions on what we're covering today, as always. Okay. So all of you have a overview of 2020, I hope. If you don't, then check your email, because I emailed it to you when I sent it out. And this is really just for you to see what's going on in the month of April. And as you can see, there's a lot going on in April. We have a lot of things will come up. So, and obviously I can't talk about everything today. But, if you do want to discuss any of these transits or any of these things with me one-on-one, definitely feel free to reach out either for like a reading or a coaching session. Also with the weekly forecast and with the videos that I'm doing, that will also be another support in which you can see how all of this is playing out. Okay. All right. So we will be, so some of the things that are happening this month is, of course, the Jupiter conjunction, which we'll talk about today, that happened already. Then we have a full moon tomorrow on April 7th. That's going to be a super moon, so it's going to be quite strong. And I definitely advise you guys to watch my video on the subject, because it's definitely going to be a quite intense full moon. And we will feel a lot of push and pull with this full moon because there are a lot of squares in that full moon chart. I also created some mini videos from the full moon video to give some additional support to people out there who are struggling right now and who are having a hard time. So feel free to also watch the mini videos if you don't want to watch the whole full moon video. That's available on my website as well. All right, then of course Venus will enter her shadow phase on April 9th. That means that this is the pre-phase to when it goes retrograde, and we'll talk about that actually in our next forecasting forum on May 3rd. So if you're interested in the Venus station phases and retrograde phase that's coming up, we will definitely talk about that. But the shadow phase, I would just say, pay attention to what comes up for you between April 9th and May 13 in regards to relationships, finances, and your values, what you value in life, because that's something that you're going to take a look at during the retrograde phase and also during the second shadow phase after Venus goes direct again. So use the shadow phases, journal on what comes up, or write down in your calendar, here's what happened today with finances or relationships, or with what's important to me right now in regards to my communication or my learning or my sharing information, anything like that. Okay. That's just a little bit of a hint for you to get ready for that. And then of course we have Pluto station. We have a Pluto station and a Pluto retrograde starting in April. So again, this also intensifies, of course, how we're experiencing this Jupiter-PLuto conjunction that's currently active right now, because the Pluto station started literally a day before the Jupiter-PLuto conjunction, right? So because Pluto is more exalted right now in the sky, this Jupiter-PLuto conjunction also feels a little bit stronger this time around. Let me just see, somebody just wrote something. Danny is saying 11 degrees of Capricorn ascendant, North Node in Pisces in the second house, Aquarius. Okay, so you're giving me all your data already. Okay, thanks, Danny. I'll come back to that if you have a question. Okay, wonderful. So basically, the Pluto retrograde, of course, always gives us an opportunity to kind of go within and deal with what it is that we really need to focus on from a soul level or a soul purpose place, and how we can get to a much deeper connection to ourselves, a much more truthful connection and more passionate connection with ourselves in regards to what we're doing out there in the world, socially speaking, and what we're creating and building and what we're leaving behind, right? So this Pluto station is definitely going to be very powerful. Then the other thing, of course, Saturn is starting its station phase this month as well, slowing down to preparing to go retrograde on April 26th until May 25. So, another station phase. So we have Pluto, we have Saturn. After the Saturn station phase, shortly after that, Jupiter starts its station phase as well in the beginning of May. So there's a lot of station phases that start happening, starting this month. And each station phase, of course, is an exaltation of that energy, of that planet's energy. Aries asking me, how far back will Pluto retrograde? Pluto will retrograde from April 25th until October 4th, and we'll go back to 22.5 degrees of Capricorn right here. You can see it right here in this entry where it says Pluto retrograde. So you have basically, it usually only retrogrades back a couple of degrees because Pluto is a very, very slow moving planet, right? So it doesn't have a lot of distance that it goes back and forth in. All right. So, and then what else do we have this month? Yeah. And then of course the Venus station also starts at the end of April and will go until May 24th. So more on that in the next forum. Okay. So I want you to take out your birth chart if you don't have it out already. And let's start with Saturn and Aquarius, and we'll talk a little bit about Saturn Aquarius and where that shows up in your chart and how you can work with that energy And then if you have questions around that, you know, feel free to let me know and write them in the chat window. Okay, so let me just pull up the last page here for those of you who want to see when the next forum is and who want to kind of like connect with us on May 3rd. Tanya's saying, I highly recommend Sonja's coaching sessions. They're excellent. Thanks, Tanya. That's awesome. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, and so, you know, have a really good next couple of weeks, and keep tuning in, you know, keep tuning in for the videos, keep tuning in for the forecast, for the weekly forecast and the daily forecasts, because the more you can align yourself with the current energies, the more present you can be, and the more present you can be, the easier all of this shifting and changing will feel to each one of you. I promise you this, because being present is a really big part of being able to shift with more ease, to be a little bit more, to be more in acceptance, and to be a little bit less anxious around the uncertainty that's going on, because uncertainty has to do with the future. But if we're able to be present, and if we're able to connect to what's here now and what's so now, that will help with feeling a little bit more grounded and less anxious. All right, so have a good one. I love you all. Stay healthy, stay grounded, stay centered, stay safe, and keep tuning in with yourself. Okay, much love to all of you. And namaste. Have a good one. Okay, bye-bye.